Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open with an oil conglomerate preparing for a voyage into the Indian Ocean. The expedition leader Fred briefs the team about a mysterious island which was only recently discovered because of infrared satellites. The mission nerd Roy says it was shrouded in an ominous cloud that they think is gas emitting from oil deposits, which is why we need to get there first. Captain Ross says that it's dangerous to sail into the unknown, but all Fred cares about is making a claim on that sweet crude. Outside, a paleontologist bribes the underpaid guard at the front gate to let him onto the restricted dock. Jack Prescott believes the gas is produced by a giant primate, so Jackie chans himself onto the vessel and hides inside a lifeboat. The ship sets sail through a storm that comes into play later, and Jack decides to reveal himself by interrupting a meeting of Big Oil. He warns the seamen about stories from the 1700s about a giant hairy humanoid living on the island, but Fred's just like, who's this hippie? Assuming that he's a spy for some rival oil company, he wraps up the meeting and orders Jack to be locked up in the brig. As they're leading him away, Hawkeye spots a beautiful woman in a life raft, so everybody comes out to rescue this one. They bring her on board, where she passes through about a dozen seamen's hands before finally being set down in the furthest room away they could find. Sailor Joe offers to remove her clothes because for some reason nobody on this trip has any medical experience, so Fred asks for Jack's help. The hippie is a professional at sniffing strange substances, so is able to wake up Dwan with some smelling salts to tell us how she got the silly name. It's just a nod to the original character's name, but Dwayne here says she switched up the letters of Dawn to be more memorable because she's an actress. She was on her way to film the sequel to the movie Deep Throat, however her director's yacht blew up in the storm and everybody else died. The whole crew, especially Jack, are smitten, so instead of leaving this distressed woman at the nearest port, we continue on with the mission. She basically becomes the unofficial mascot for seamen while doing random jobs around the ship and pensively gazing off into the horizon. The only reason Jack is brought along is because he knows how to operate a camera, but nothing ever comes of the photos he takes. When they arrive at the island, they prepare a landing craft, however Dwan is told that she can't accompany the party for her own safety. Having none of that, the leggy blonde flutters her eyelashes at the expedition leader until the married man agrees to basically whatever she wants. Jack takes photos for Fred's wife back home before joining them as they launch into the curtain of fog and the island becomes visible. Landing on the beach, Jack behaves like he's on vacation with his new girlfriend despite telling everyone earlier that there's a giant killer Bigfoot on the island. He also wastes all their film while chasing Dwan inland because she saw a waterfall and can't help but ignore every warning from the group. Jack babysits her the whole time as they venture deeper into the island, but she really isn't dressed for crude oil adventures. Coming across a giant wall, Fred believes it was left behind by an ancient civilization, but Jack says, "Look dummy, that mud repair is fresh." The group walks down the barrier until coming across a tribe living at the gate holding a wedding ritual. A bride is dressed in a blonde wig while a priest wearing a gorilla mask shows us his best pelvic thrusts until spotting the intruders. He stops the ceremony and notices Dwan, so tries to trade her for 6 of the local girls because that's the exchange rate for natural blondes. The tribe gets angry when Jack refuses to sell his girl, so the seamen fire off a few warning shots, then run quickly back to the boat. That night, as they begin making plans to probably exterminate a whole tribe, Dwan is hanging out on deck being all vulnerable and stuff. In the blink of an eye, a group of natives in a canoe swipe her up in a float by kidnapping, leaving behind only their calling card of tribal Lucky Charms. Jack rallies the seamen to go ashore while Dwan is doped up with seashell juice and taken to the gorilla priest for his aggravated pelvic thrusts. He does this for 10 minutes straight until the villagers unlock the giant gate and chafing occurs, then ties her up on the other side. What they call a wedding to their ape god appears a lot like a sacrifice to a 90-foot gorilla that keeps coming back the more you feed it. King Kong picks up Dwan to see what the humans have on offer today and gives his roar of approval, causing her to faint. He then wanders off with his first legitimate blonde while Jack's seamen show up with flares and gunshots to scare away the villagers. Upon realizing that Dwan wasn't just taken by some man in an ape suit, Fred stumbles into a large footprint that some may call a hole. The size of this thing is enough for him to pack up his ship until the captain convinces him to exploit Kong for everything he's worth. Fred says good idea, then brings ashore bulldozers to dig a giant tiger trap and fills it with barrels of chloroform. Jack and his depleted number of seamen follow Kong's trail in the hope of finding Dwan, who wakes up in a cave a bit sore from her wedding night. A curious Kong jabs at her with the largest mechanical fingers ever created, so Dwan tries to run away, but her hairy husband just snatches her up. She starts by trying to fight back, but when that fails to work, she begins to flirt with the ape as if he understands any of this. With enough caressing of the giant's fingers, a charmed Kong puts the girl down and returns to just staring at her, which I totally understand. Dwan makes another attempt to get away, but this time gets covered in mud, so Kong gets upset like he's the spokesman for hygiene. He brings her over to a nearby waterfall and holds her under the curtain with his 1,600-pound hydraulic arm to wash off all the mud. While giving her all these goofy looks, he dumps her into the pond, then pulls her back out before drying off Dwan with a blow. The actress gets right into it like she's filming a commercial for Gorilla Hand sofas, but is probably now covered in great ape spit. That night Jack crosses a fallen tree over a deep ravine, but when the rest of the search party tries following, Kong isn't having it. He rolls all of the semen off the log into the slit, killing everybody except for Jack and some dude named Bone who clings to the cliff. While that guy runs back to the wall and we never see him again, Kong isn't able to reach Jack hiding inside a small cave. It appears like he might use the log as a tool, but this primate hasn't reached that stage of evolution yet and just wanders off. Jack follows him all the way to the ape's favorite volcano spot, where Kong picks off Dwan's loincloth top like a real romantic. She insists that it isn't going to work between them because he's 100 foot tall and she's an Aries, but a giant snake comes out anyway. Kong defends his bride from the serpent as it coils itself around his body, but Dwan runs away and into the arms of Jack. Seeing them run off together, Kong gets angry and rips the glorified worm in half before chasing them into the jungle. The pair jump off a cliff and use the river to float away while Kong takes the long way around to prevent his fur from getting wet. At one point Dwan trips over and knocks herself out, so Jack must carry her the rest of the way if he still wants a girlfriend. When they reach the wall, Dwan wakes up and they make it inside, but Jack drops her on her head and she falls unconscious again. Angry at all the abuse they're causing his woman, Kong arrives and begins banging on the gate because the big ape can't climb. He shows how useless it was when he breaks it down, but then shows how useless he can be when he falls right in the trap. Finding the pit of chloroform a good place to take a nap, the tribe surround the giant ape in prayer, and that's the last time we see them. We straight up swipe their god and lock him inside a large tank before sailing back to America to exploit the heck out of him. Fred employs Dwan to tour the countryside with Kong on display as their new mascot, while Jack also gets a contract to take photos or something. They feel bad, but not enough to turn down the money, I suppose, and then stand in the same spot until the sun goes down before finally kissing. Dwan's scarf floats down into the container where Kong takes a big old sniff, then flies into a rage because he wants to smell the whole girl. Before he destroys the ship, Dwan tries to calm him down from the skylight, but Kong jumps and she falls right into his hand. The husband then lays on his back and places her between his thighs, so Dwan says she's flattered but really must be going. Climbing out of the tank safely, she then passes out again with no provocation, as they really must check her for concussions. We cut to the big night where Kong gets unveiled to the world, but Jack has had a change of heart and doesn't need the money. The actress continues with the farce, however, because she doesn't want to be known as Deep Throat Dwan when the money inevitably dries up. At the show, Jack watches from the crowd while Dwan is put on display in a mock-up of the tribal wedding ceremony. Kong is brought out inside a giant gas pump and unveiled within a cage while wearing a giant Burger King crown. The media swarm Dwan to ask her questions about her husband, but Kong believes she's being attacked, so effortlessly breaks out. He's completely ripped this thing apart before the people finally decide to run away, and Kong steps on them 4 bodies apiece. Fred even gets squished by the ape as he searches through the crowd for Dwan like a giant game of Where's Waldo. He spots her flee onto a train with Jack, so breaks out of the stadium and begins ripping open the cars like tins of sardines trying to find her. A blonde who isn't his wife gets hurled into a wall while Jack and Dwan make it across the river to Manhattan. They take shelter in an abandoned bar and assume they're completely safe because the army is guarding the bridge and Kong doesn't like water. That doesn't prevent him from swimming across the East River and causing a blackout when he walks through the power lines. Kong then happens to come across Dwan either because he could smell her or by dumb luck and reclaims his bride. He then carries her to the Twin Towers because they remind him of some rock spires on Skull Island, and begins climbing the World Trade Center. It's where he takes the blonde girls to fatally lay with back home, and by the looks of him, Kong is about to try it again. Jack follows him to the top, but so does a group of soldiers with the standard issue giant ape prevention flamethrowers. Kong leaps from one tower to the other and begins throwing various rooftop accessories at soldiers until something blows them up. Jack watches helplessly from the wrong side as 3 heavily armed helicopters arrive, so Kong puts down the girl. The Hueys fill him full of bullets and Kong manages to take one of them out, but it's already too late and he collapses. Since he doesn't go over the edge right away, Dwan figures she should nudge him a little, so the ape plummets 1,300 feet to the ground. Kong still isn't even dead yet, and already the photographers are climbing all over his chest when Dwan approaches in tears. She listens to the giant ape's heartbeat slowly stop before being swarmed by a mob of reporters all looking for an exclusive. Jack stands in the crowd as she calls out his name, but he doesn't come because this is the attention that she wanted.
Did you ever meet anyone before whose life was saved by Deep Throat?
And the movie ends.